Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Preparing Your Practice to Bounce Back with Chris Barrow. We reached out to Chris. Obviously, everyone knows I'm Alex O'Neill. I'm head of, well, I hope most people will know who's on this. I'm head of compliance here at Code. We've been running weekly or a couple of webinars a week, usually a question and answer one on COVID-19. And then we've been doing on a Thursday a different webinar. We've got a whole program planned for May as well, which is really good, with some panels lined up and other things that we're looking at. I think with the popularity of this one, I might ask Chris if he wants to do another one at some point, but I appreciate how busy he is. Oh, he's up for it. Brilliant. So one of the questions we were getting asked a lot recently is, what should I be buying? What should I be thinking about? And we were thinking of putting together a webinar ourselves, but I know that Chris is very deep in these conversations at the moment, and with his clients, with the group that he runs through Extreme Business. So we thought it'd be a really good opportunity to team up with Chris, tell him some of our thoughts, and obviously ask him to share his with everybody. So the format is Chris is going to talk for about half an hour, 40 minutes or so. Then we'll go over to a Q&A. So if you have any questions for myself, for Chris, just general, you can type those into the Q&A box at the top above the chat. Please don't type them into the chat because we can't find them in there. So you just need to click on the Q&A bit. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to hand over to Chris, and I will, you'll hear from me again in about half an hour, 40 minutes or so. So thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you, Alex, and a very, very good afternoon to everybody. And I'm going to just rattle on the basis that my audio and video are going to be working absolutely fine. So to Alex and Frankie, if there are any issues technically, perhaps if you can either interrupt by audio and tell me, or throw something into the chat box. But I suppose, like you and the rest of the audience, we're all becoming webinar and Zoom experts because we've done little else for the last 6 weeks. So we'll see where this goes. And what I'm going to try and do over the next half hour, 40 minutes or so is to really try and give you a heads up on where we're at today, and some of the issues that are facing us as we move from lockdown into phase 1 of return to work. And I'm going to offer some ideas, some suggestions, some perspective from the perspective of being in this privileged position that I'm reasonably well connected with what's going on in the world of dentistry. Lots of clients, lots of contacts who are feeding to me on a day-to-day basis. You're not going to get all the answers. I might end up raising more questions than answers. We'll see. I'm also going to make reference to a number of PDFs through the slide presentation. And if you're familiar with Code webinars, you'll know that there's a handout section on the webinar platform where you can actually download your own PDF versions of some of the stuff that I'm going to run through. So let's start this journey. I'm going to do 3 things. I'm going to take a look in the mirror and have a look at where we've been over the last 6 weeks of lockdown. I'm going to take a look in the mirror and say, where are we today? Literally 7th of May 2020, where the hell are we up to? And then hopefully just do a little bit of crystal ball gazing and look forward over the weeks ahead and try to anticipate some of the issues that we're going to be dealing with as we move forward. And I appreciate there's a couple of questions that have arrived in the Q&A section already, which are relevant, but I'm going to ask you to be patient with me for a minute, get through some of this material, and you'll see that we'll either cover the answers to those questions or we'll be able to go back and review them. So the first thing I want to do is I want to use the word confidence. And I appreciate that there is a huge amount of uncertainty in the marketplace right now. And I appreciate that people like Alex and myself and many others are being bombarded with questions on a day-to-day basis. Those questions have changed as we've moved through the weeks, but it's still 1,000 questions a day. I mean, it might be that we've only got 100 answers and that 900 of them remain unanswered. But I want you to be confident that those answers are going to emerge as we move through the days ahead. So let's first of all take a very quick look in the rear view mirror, and let's look at where we've been. 6.5 weeks ago, Boris stood up on a Monday night and said, you're all staying indoors and nobody can go to work again unless they're a key worker or an NHS worker. And so literally overnight, my business came to a grinding halt. Your business came to a grinding halt. And if you remember that very first week of lockdown, we were all absolutely in free fall. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. We didn't know what was going to happen to our teams. We didn't know what was going to happen to our self-employed clinicians. We didn't know what was going to happen to our patients. And we didn't know what was going to happen to us either. And between Monday and Friday of that week, there was probably a level of stress and anxiety in the wider population and also within the dental community than perhaps anything that we've ever seen before. And so right on that first week, we were at 100% anxiety and 100% uncertainty because nobody knew what the hell was going on. But the very first glimmer of light that we had was actually on the Friday of that week, because it was that Friday that the Chancellor stood in front of the daily briefing and said, okay, we're going to provide some financial support to team members. We're going to provide some financial support to businesses. Now, of course, as is always the case with politicians, the devil is always in the detail. Standing in Downing Street and making grand pronouncements about the fact that we've got your back was very, very comforting on that Friday night. We all heaved a bit of a sigh of relief, but then we had to settle into the devil of the detail, and we had to go through this 6-week period where we've had to actually dive down. We've had to figure out how furlough was going to operate. We had to figure out how we were going to apply for it. We had to wait for the HMRC portal to open. We had to go through portal purgatory in order to try and make our claims. And right now, of course, we're now beginning to get the first clients who are reporting to us that those furlough payments have come through from the government, and that as a result of that, they've been able to recoup some of the money that they've paid out to furloughed teams. But we also, of course, had other questions about the people for whom furlough didn't apply. What were we going to do with our self-employed hygienists, therapists and dentists? Were the government going to be providing any help? If so, what did it look like? And then, of course, subsequent to that, it was a week after that, I think, that the chief dental officer turned up with the first car crash webinar and said, okay, maybe if we're thinking about it, we'll let you know. It was all very, very unclear. And so we probably went from 100% uncertainty to about 90% uncertainty with the Chancellor's statement, back up to 97% uncertainty when we saw the CDO's first webinar, because it left us all hanging out there. And so what we've done for the last 6 weeks is that we've been trying our level best to answer as many questions as we could about what was relevant. What was relevant was furlough. What was relevant was redeployment. What was relevant was the position of mixed practices in this balancing act between being redeployed and continuing to receive NHS payments, and on the other hand, having a percentage of income that was private, and whether, in fact, any government financial support would be available for that private allocation of our business through the form of CBILS, through the form of rates relief, through the form of grants, and of course, ultimately in the last few weeks, through the form of bounce back loans as well. So we've uncertainly moved through the situation for our teams, and we've uncertainly moved through the situation in terms of financial support for our businesses. And along the way, there's been this growing question that we've been asking, which is, okay, the chief dental officer has told us that these urgent dental centres are going to be open. Where are they? When are they going to open? Are they going to be properly equipped? And am I going to be one of them in the case of NHS practices? So that's a 6-week journey of uncertainty in which in some areas we've begun to get some clarity. But right now on the 7th of May, let's now take a look in the mirror and let's ask us where the uncertainty rests today, Thursday afternoon. And I've got a list of areas here where I think that we are today uncertain. The first one is absolutely obvious, which is that we simply don't know when that return to work is going to happen. We hope that Boris is going to stand up on Sunday night, and we hope that he's going to allow a partial easing of lockdown procedures. But it seems unlikely at this particular point in time that that's going to extend to the delivery of what you and I would describe as routine dental services or elective dental services. That still seems to be some way off. I'll come back later to the position of private practices and whether a private practice can actually open at this point in time or not. By the way, the answer is yes, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But we don't know when we're going back to work. We just know that the furlough system is scheduled to end at the end of June. And dates as to that return to work vary widely. Sam Whaley-Cohen, Portman Dental, he was on a daily briefing with me yesterday, and he confirmed that Portman are getting ready for the 18th of May. But what you need to understand is that Portman aren't going back to work on the 18th of May. Portman are getting ready to go back to work, and they want to have that readiness in place by a week on Monday in anticipation of what might be an early call. But I've also spoken to other people who have deferred that return to work date further back, and so it's up for grabs. Second question, when we do return to work, what level of treatment are we likely to be able to deliver to our patients? Now, we don't have answers to that, but we do have a lot of clues. And what I'll do is I'll refer in a moment to where those clues are and what those clues tell us about what the return to work phase is going to look like. Question number 3, what PPE am I going to need? Is it going to be FFP3 for AGP procedures? Is it going to be FFP2 for non-AGP procedures? Exactly what am I going to require? When am I going to require it by? Where on earth am I going to get hold of it? Because as a small independent practitioner, I'm probably going to find myself right at the back of the queue in the supply chain. And finally, what am I going to have to pay for that PPE in a marketplace in which freight and shipping charges are escalating at an exponential rate? Finally, what else am I going to have to buy in order to comply with guidance? And in addition to that, what am I going to have to buy in order to give my team and my patients confidence that they are safe? And so we're now seeing in the marketplace that there's a continuing debate about air filtration systems. Number 1, do we believe that they're going to be necessary? Number 2, if they are necessary, which level of kit should I buy? Number 3, where will those air filtration systems go? Are they going to be in every surgery in the waiting room? And next question, what difference does an air filtration system make at the end of the day? Does it simply reduce the 30-minute cool down time so that we might be able to see patients a little bit more quickly than is being suggested by some of the pundits out there? More speculation, more uncertainty. Some dentists are buying, and I represent within my own client base. We've formed a buying group, and this week we've placed orders for significant sums in terms of PPE at competitive prices. But not all of my clients have chosen to do that. Some of them are playing a waiting game, And part of it is a waiting game because they want to wait until they get official guidance on what the actual PPE requirement is. And others are playing a waiting game because they think that the National Health Service is going to magically turn up and say that in consideration of your increased costs of operation, that the NHS may offer some form of financial support for the PPE that you are going to be required to use. My personal view, don't book your holidays on that one, but there are some people who are sitting and waiting to see whether they can get financial subsidy. And then simple questions. Do I need Perspex screens at reception? Well, back to Portman Dental, they're buying them. And the reason that they're doing that, and it's something that Sam Whaley-Cohen, the chief exec, has been very clear about, is that actually they've decided to over-provide on the basis that if they over-provide on safety, they're probably going to fall on the right side of the fence if they get it wrong, if you see what I mean. Whereas if they don't provide enough safety, and if the guidance comes in at a level that are above what they've bought, they'll fall on the wrong side of the fence and they'll be in catch-up mode. Now, it's all right for a corporate because they've got very deep pockets. Again, what does the independent practitioner do in an environment like that? So where are we? Today, we've probably gone from about 100% to about 80% in terms of the level of uncertainty with which we face the future. And I'm sorry that it's only 80% on the 7th of May, but it is what it is. And we've got to move forward with our best judgment. So let's now take a look at the crystal ball. What questions do we think we're going to be asking over the weeks ahead as the phase one of the return to work starts to become a reality? Maybe somebody somewhere says, doubt very much whether it will be Boris Johnson, I doubt whether it will be Matt Hancock, but somebody at Department of Health, somebody at NHS England, somebody at the CQC, somebody somewhere says, do you know what? This is a date on which we think it's going to be okay for you to go back to work. It's interesting that the lead in most other countries is being taken by the relevant dental association. So whether it's the Australian Dental Association, the Swiss Dental Association, the American Dental Association, they're usually the people that are actually publishing, first of all, specific guidance in terms of what levels of safety and care will be in place alongside a return to work date. But here are the questions that we're going to be asking ourselves as we move into the return to work phase. Number one, what on earth is that new patient journey going to look like? Are we going to have to ask patients to wait outside the building and to be called in individually? Probably yes. Are we going to be asking patients to socially distance themselves whilst they're in the building? Probably yes. Are we going to have Perspex screens in front of our reception and front desk team? Probably yes. Are those patients going to be seen at the rate of about 8 per day per surgery? Answer, probably yes. Is there going to be a 30-minute cool down time between each patient? Probably yes. Are we going to have to split our dental team into the clinical team into 3 groups? Group 1, runners, and runners are people that are running around the building getting things done, but they're not in direct contact with patients. Group 2, non-AGP team. Group 3, potentially AGP team, and those 3 teams working in unison around the building in order to get the patients through? Probably yes. Am I going to have to separate surgeries for non-AGP and AGP procedures? Probably yes. Am I going to have to zone my diary so that there are times of the day where we focus on non-AGP procedures and there are other times a day when we focus on AGP procedures? Probably yes. Are your salaried team going to have to accept a change in their working practices because they're not coming back to work 9 till 5, 5 days a week with an hour for lunch? It isn't going to be like that. In dentistry 2.0, the chances are that you're going to be open more hours for more days. And the phrase 8 till 8, 6 days a week is one that is being bandied around on a regular basis. Probably yes. And are you also going to have to sit down with your self-employed clinicians and ask them to agree to their changes in hours and their changes in working habits? Probably yes. And are those self-employed clinicians going to have to enter into a conversation about how their remuneration package is going to change in Dentistry 2.0 in a way which is still going to be win-win? It's still going to be fair for them, but it's going to retain the solvency of the business overall in this new environment? Answer, probably yes. Are the patients going to have to pay more to cover the cost of PPE, whether they are in the NHS or the private sector? Probably yes. Are clinicians going to have to make a contribution towards the cost of that PPE? Probably no. And I think that the whole of that cost of PPE is going to pass to the patient. And finally, are you going to be able to make this profitable and keep your business and your family solvent for the rest of 2020? And the answer is possibly yes, not probably. And the possibly is going to depend very, very much upon how carefully you play the game, how carefully you do your financial forecasting, how carefully you organize your marketing, how carefully you organize the new patient journey in 2.0 dentistry, and how carefully you deploy your team and you organize your time. And it might also depend on how good you are at raising external finance to see you through what is going to be a difficult return to work period until we can get back to some semblance of normality. Nobody said this was going to be easy. Bouncing back from what is effectively a global pandemic is not going to be easy, but it is going to be possible, provided you are careful in your planning. I spoke earlier on about clues. What I've got here is a couple of screenshots from the Australian Dental Association. Now, Australian dentistry went back to work a week last Tuesday, and they have been back at work for over a week. And let me share with you that some of the clients that I work with down in Australia are reporting to me that their revenues are running at about 30% of their pre-COVID levels. And that's because the patients are slowly beginning to return back into the practices, and also because they are at the moment delivering what they call a level 2 range of services, which is basically kind of emergency dental care plus a bit. And we've got downloads that you can have of those Australian Dental Association documents. But can I tell you, since I actually prepared this webinar with Alex, we've had another document out here. I'm putting it up in front of the screen. It's from the International Digital Dental Academy, and it's a 70-page document looking at potential workflow in the return to work environment. Something I'm happy to share a copy of this with Alex so that he can distribute to you, because let me tell you, it's a fascinating document in terms of what return to work is going to look like. Today, the Swiss dental authorities have published a similar document describing their return to work. And my understanding, in fact, is that later today or tomorrow, the British Association of Private Dentistry are going to be publishing their own analysis and research of what they think the return to work environment is going to look like. So the point I'm making to you is hang on in there, because we can't keep asking for answers to questions in real time. People have to sit and think about these things. But the interesting thing is that most of the information that we're getting, which is helping us, is coming from trade associations and professional bodies. Frankly, if you sit and wait for the Department of Health, if you sit and wait for NHS England, and frankly, if you sit and wait for the CQC or the GDC to give you any guidelines, you're going to wait a long time. Credit where it's due to the British Dental Association, who are pushing for guidelines, and also the BAPD, the British Association of Private Dentistry, who are pushing for those guidelines as well. And I have no doubt that those return to work guidelines, even a week from today, are going to be fleshing the map out to a greater degree than we can talk about today. But whatever happens, I believe that what you do in your practice has got to be guided by what I describe as 5 main principles. And I'm going to start moving around this circle, all right? Number 1, same as the government, we've all got to be guided by the science in terms of when we return to work, because I know we're all worried about the solvency of our businesses, but ultimately the primary concern is the safety of our patients and the safety of our teams. And we have to be guided primarily by that, and we have to listen to what the scientists tell us is the right thing to do. We secondly have to be guided by the law, and whether that's employment law or any other law, we've got to look at our legal obligations to our team and our legal obligations to our patients in making all the decisions that we make going forward. Thirdly, we have to listen to what Boris and Matt Hancock say, and we're going to have to follow the rules as far as they're concerned. But it's the last 2 on this circle which I believe represent a real dilemma for a lot of independent practice owners, and that's the balancing act between the financial reality of the owner and his family or her family and the moral compass. I have not yet met an owner who doesn't want to pay all of their team full wages. I've not yet met an owner who doesn't want to keep their hygienists, therapists, and associates in the same situation financially as they were before. And I've not yet met an owner who doesn't want to have to charge the patients more for what they do. That's the moral compass. But the financial reality is going to be different. And so the balancing act between that financial reality and moral compass is going to dictate the way in which we all move forward. And those 5 guiding principles lead us to make decisions and conclusions around all of the groups of people for whom, as business owners, we have a responsibility. Number 1, we have to look after our patients. Number 2, as leaders, we have to look after our team and our self-employed clinicians, and in some cases, our referring GDPs as well, because we're going to need their support in the return to work phase. We also have a duty of care to act in a responsible way for our suppliers. We have a duty of care to communicate with our lenders, whether it's banks, mortgage companies, or asset finance brokers, and communicate with them in a responsible way about our ability to pay. And finally, we also have a responsibility to stay in touch with our wider community within our postcode and keep them well informed of what it is that we're doing as a practice in order to prepare for the return to work phase. Finally, of course, we've got to look after ourselves and our families. That's a lot of responsibility. And it's a responsibility that every single owner has faced for the last 6 weeks and is going to continue to face right through to the end of this year and beyond. So one of your handouts is what I call a little COVID-19 one-page impact plan that across the top actually summarizes those 5 guiding principles. Down the left-hand side gives you the communities of people for whom you're responsible. And a lot of my clients have found that little one-page impact plan very useful in determining how they intend to approach each decision that they make. So let's talk about the return to work. No, let me talk about 2 things. The rest of lockdown, because we know we've got some more lockdown to go. And then let's talk about return to work. First things first, over on the left-hand side, one of your handouts is something that I've used for many years, and it's a one-page marketing plan for an independent private practice, a 10-step process to market your practice. And I can talk for 8 hours on that very first piece of paper, and maybe Alex will ask me back in the return to work phase to say, take us through your marketing plan step by step. More than happy to do that. But by the way, I run an e-learning platform which is called the Extreme Business Academy, Membership of that platform is free of charge during lockdown. You can go to the Extreme Business Academy, you can register, and there's over 40 hours of verifiable CPD up there, all to do with the business of dentistry. And one of the things that's in there is a 3.5-hour marketing course, which you can take, which will take you on a video journey through the 10 steps of that marketing plan. And what you and I all have to do in the lockdown phase and in the return to work phase is to slightly tweak that marketing plan to adapt to the circumstances. And I can spend plenty of time talking to you about that in detail, but nonetheless, everything that you need to know to continue your marketing through the lockdown period, which you must do, and also to reactivate your marketing during the return to work phase, it's all there in that 3.5-hour course free of charge. And also I'm happy to answer any questions online about it as well. And within that course is a thing called a social media calendar, which gives your management team and your marketing team a little pro forma to make sure that they are posting to social media on a daily basis during lockdown and return to work, that they're sending out regular posts to the community, and that you're also sending out email patient newsletters on a regular basis as well. And the third handout there, which is going to become preeminently important when we get into the return to work phase, is going to be the agenda for your morning huddle. Now, it's always been difficult to convince some practices to instigate a morning huddle because they always used to complain people started at different times, we had part-timers, all the rest of it. Well, those excuses have gone out the window now, because when we get into the return to work phase, if I can quote my friend Dr. Simon Thackeray, no military plan ever survives first contact with the enemy. So no matter how much rehearsal you do, I've got a lot of clients who are planning to go back to work for a week with the team, but without any patients, so that they can rehearse their new patient journey. But no matter how much rehearsal you do, the very first day that you open that practice to patients, by 11 o'clock that day, your systems will be falling down. And you're going to need to review those systems every morning at your morning huddle in order to make sure that you adapt and improve on a day-to-day basis. And let's not lose sight of the fact that everything that I ever said about running a business is going to be more relevant now than it's ever been. Over the next 6 months particularly, the accuracy of your financial systems and analysis are going to be mission critical in keeping the business solvent. You're going to need to have very robust return to work marketing systems, a robust return to work patient journey, robust return to work clinical systems, clinical governance, and a very robust organizational structure with a team who are flexible to the needs of the return to work environment. So it's never been more important to work on your business as well as working in your business, and to be reviewing that day by day so that you can stay as close as you can to being on track. So here's why I am confident in the face of all of that. Number one, we're going back to work. We don't know when, but we know we're going. Number two, in the meantime, many of my clients are doing video consultations with potential new patients, and they're also doing video consultations with existing patients as well. And in fact, there's been a massive increase, first of all, in the number of proprietary dental video platforms in the marketplace and the use of them. And that's the savvy way to get through lockdown. When you do get back to work, we know that there's going to be a backlog of treatment. We know that both your existing patients, your planned patients, your NHS patients, and your fee per item patients, they're all going to be queuing up to catch up, either because they want value for money or because they've got unmet needs. We also know that there are demographics of the population that have remained largely financially unaffected by this lockdown period. And those people are going to be back investing in the dentistry that you used to do for them. One way or another, we're going to find a way of delivering safe healthcare. The guidance will emerge, the new patient journey will evolve, and the pricing structure around that will develop. It's an inevitability. Dentistry isn't going anywhere. It's just evolving into a 2.0. And nobody has got the absolute definitive answer right now as to how that's going to be made profitable. But I remain confident that that answer will manifest itself. But the only thing you'd better get used to is that you're going to be working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, until we get back to anything like the good old days. And so welcome to the club, because I've been sat down here 11 days a week. 11 hours a day. Sounds like 11 days a week. 11 hours a day, 6 days a week for the last 7 weeks. I'm working harder than I ever done in my life, but I'm enjoying it, looking after people like you. So here's what I do. Since we put that slide together 48 hours ago, I'm now working with 109 practices in a regeneration program. We're doing weekly CPD tutorials for lockdown teams. We're doing weekly reporting for owners and managers. We've got a private Facebook workplace with over 650 people communicating with each other on a day-to-day basis. I'm doing private Zoom calls with my clients 3 times a week. And they've also got direct access to me via email or Zoom to ask questions. And most exciting of all, a week ago, we formed our own private buying group. And I need you to know I don't make a single penny out of that buying group. I'm running it free of charge as a benefit for my members, my clients. But those 109 practices placed a £300,000 order today for PPE in advance of return to work. And we're using a supply company, first of all, to make sure that we're in an appropriate position in the queue. And secondly, to get the right technical advice in terms of the type of PPE that we should be buying. And finally, as soon as the return to work button is pressed, that regeneration group of my clients will carry on until the end of this year as a minimum, in a new system that reflects the way that everybody's back to work. So a 60-second sales pitch. If you want to join that community, get coached, work with a community of people who have got a positive mental outlook, and join the buying group, then that's an investment, including VAT, of $300 a month per practice from now till the end of the year. And you've got a web link there on the slide if you're interested in going to see any more information about it. I do believe that we also have a special offer for the people who are on this broadcast. And I think that the magic of technology may mean that we see a pop-up for that special offer. And there it is, as if by magic. Just before lockdown, I published a complete guide to reception training, a series of scripts on how receptionists should answer the phone in a variety of dental situations. That normally retails at £19.95. Offer today for code members. You can have it half price plus postage and packing if you buy now, and we'll get them out to you as soon as we can find a post office that is close enough. You'll get a hard print copy, and you'll also get a digital copy that you can distribute to the rest of your team as well. That's my comments finished. I think I need to bring Alex back into the room in order to look at some of these questions. But for now, thank you for listening. I hope that's been helpful. I know I can't solve all your problems, but I do know that I can in the future. And we've just got to be patient and wait. We'll get there, and we will. There's every reason for you to keep your chins up. Thanks for listening.